You ready to spend your stimulus check, Bob?
Yeah.
Let's talk about what the Bible says about money today.
Stay tuned.
Did you hear me?
All right, so I guess we're talking about money today.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about it.
Oh, you turned this way down. That's what it is.
On the volume here, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Let me see if I can. Oh, yeah, that's better. There we go.
So that's what we're talking about today? Money?
Well, kinda, right?
Money.
You know the whole.
Money.
I'm not gonna let you get that out of your system.
Isn't that a song? What was that on Ocean's 11? Money.
Let's just let my wife comment on that.
Money.
The reason I want to talk about this is that I was. So our theme, it'll pop up here a minute on one of our computer screens is what you gonna do with your stimulus check, right?
Okay, yeah.
Well, last week I was at the grocery store on the same day that we got our stimulus check, right?
Right.
And Jessica sent me into the store, and this little girl was at the checkout, over here at the corner market. And so when I'm getting ready to leave, I'm just chatting with her or whatever, and you can tell she's a college kid, and it's and the corner market is right across from USM, so it's natural to have all these college kids working over there. And I said, hey, don't spend your stimulus check all in one place. And she said, I ain't getting one. I said, why ain't you getting one? She said, because I'm still a dependent. I said, oh, okay. She said, my friend's got 3 kids. She's getting $4,200. She said, woo, I reckon I'm going to have me a kid so I can get me $1,400.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? That's the way some people think.
And I couldn't get that. I know she said that flippantly, and I know that she really, to some degree, didn't mean that. But I know that down inside, there was probably some of that was looking at that with the green eye of envy.
Yeah, and what people don't understand is like children are going to cost you way more than $1,400.
Yes. Well, and I know, like, I've been looking this week. So we're studying like what in the adult class in the auditorium at the church. What makes a great church? And, this week's topic was a great church is a great place to learn. And we've been talking about all the, we're going to start talking about the next couple of weeks is the way we learn and we teach in the church. And, I showed last night with 6 verses how the Jews get a bad rap because they miss Jesus. Why did you guys miss Jesus? Why couldn't you Saul? And I just looked at 6 verses, his lineage, his birthplace, the way he was going to teach, where he was going to start his ministry at, and 6 verses. And then I just looked at 6 verses of prophecy of the church.
Yeah, how'd you guys miss it?
Yeah, how'd you guys miss it? Well, and all those prophecies of the church, they're tied to learning, and they're tied to teaching, and they're tied to, and I want us to understand that we're in the teaching business as the church. That's why we use the podcast, right? This is a way that the church is in the teaching business. The railroad companies forgot that they were in the transportation business and thought they were in the railroad business. Is why they went out of business for. How many times you say business in one sentence?
Business.
Well, this week, Tuesday, Liam he had been writing little letters to these different fishing lure companies, just telling them how much he likes their fishing lures.
Yeah, I heard the whole story last night.
Okay, so he gets Tuesday afternoon. I reckon.
You tell the listeners, that's fine.
Yeah, well, he's been writing these letters to these fishing lure companies. These different ones, looking them up, and we've been she's been using this to her advantage. So like she'll, instead of like creative writing and stuff like that with her homeschool.
Oh yeah.
She's getting him to write these letters, and then she can go back and check over it. Well, Liam is writing these letters to him, telling him how much he appreciates your fishing lures and all this and that and other. Well, Tuesday, bing, UPS man knocks on the door, and there's a box with Liam's name on it. Well, he kicks open that box, and he's got, I don't know, 6 little lures and stuff in there that they'd sent him, and a hat, that he...
Did you tell him that diplomacy pays off?
Well, what it is as soon as that happened, Aiden looks in that box, and he was like, that ain't much in there.
Right.
My old, so he goes to, he's like, this is $1, this is $1, and
he's playing it down.
He's playing it down because you know what it is. It's that green eye of envy.
Oh, deep down, he's like, dog.
I wish I had them lures. Well, here's what's worse is later on that evening, I saw them out there doing their fishing lure swapping. Aiden's, all of a sudden, them ones that weren't no good, Aiden's trying to put a little business negotiation deal in the pot for Liam to get some of them fishing lures.
Yeah, he was planting the seed early. He's like, that's only worth $1, so that way I don't have to trade him a couple of little bobbers for it.
Well, and that's what I want to talk about today is like this picture behind us right here. I mean, this old boy right here with these dirty hands. Far too often we look down on people that's got their hands dirty, but most of the time those hands that are dirty have industry behind them.
That's right. Been there, done that.
And so I thought we could take some time today to really talk about. Now I know there's a lot of challenges we've had in the last year financially, as a whole, as a nation. But did you know that for the last decade straight, I didn't look back any further. It may go back further, but for the last decade straight, America is the most benevolent nation on the face of the earth.
Well, that would make sense.
There's no other nation that's more. Number two was Myanmar, so you can't use economics.
Right.
Like you would think that. Why do you say that would make sense for?
Well, I mean, richest nation in the world. You'd think that you would not only have the most money, but then you would give the most as well.
Well, that's what I would have thought too.
Yeah.
But then I started looking at the rankings of the countries. It doesn't line up. Myanmar, which was Burma, or either it was Burma, now it's Myanmar. I can't remember which one it is.
Some country I don't know about.
Well, it's one of them countries like over there, like west of India, type of area. It's an Asian, South Pacific country or whatever. Well,
so poor that we don't even know about them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had to look it up and I couldn't remember. I remembered it. It's one of them countries that change names, when they come out with a new maps, like which one are you now? Well, they're number 2. So it's not tied to economic status, which we would think it would make sense, right? You got the most to give.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a really good thing. Maybe we might step on some toes today, but I thought it'd be a good idea for us to look at the way that the Bible authorizes that we can get money today.
Okay, the way it authorizes we can get it.
Yeah, the way the way that the Bible uses that we can authorize to get money today. And so the best I can come up with is there's about 4 ways that the Bible authorizes to get money. And
legal authorization.
What I mean by that is the way that the Bible uses by example or implication or something like that. That's a good way for people to get money. And I'm going to save this last one, the 4th one. I don't have these in any certain order. It just thought of them in my mind, and I was just doing some looking at this. But Proverbs 13 verse 11.
We could almost do a money series because, I was thinking like total different ways of what you were thinking.
Yeah, well,
you think about it, though, like the number one problem for, like, divorce is money issues. That's why, Dave Ramsey, his show is so big because what does everybody have and what does everybody have issues over? It's money. What do you want to do with your money? Like, how much do you want to invest better? There's I don't know many people who are like, no, I don't want to make more.
Right.
I really just wish that the government would hold on to my check.
Just give it to somebody.
I have talked to like the most conservative people that I know of, and every one of them preface it like this. And I find myself doing it too. It's like, I hate this for our children and grandchildren. I hate for, on down the line that we're going to go 1 trillion dollars into debt even more. But I'll take my stimulus check.
Well, that's the thing is that
I'm not going to give it back.
Proverbs 13 and verse 11. Yeah. Do you ever do this where you like get the Blue Letter Bible or one of the what do they call it, where it's got all them parallel Bibles? Like it'll be like 19 different translations of it.
Yeah, love it.
And I can't remember what is it. Parallel, is that what it's called? Maybe that's what it's called. I don't know.
Sure.
But Proverbs 13:11, I read this thing in like 15 different verses or translations of it, and Proverbs 13:11 says, "Wealth gained by dishonesty will be diminished, but he who gathers by labor will increase." Mm-hmm. So, what do you think? There's so many. One of them is hastily gained wealth diminishes quickly. Was one of them that I read. Why do you think the proverb writer says that for?
Well, one, if it's something that's gained by dishonesty, I would think. I think like back to the criminal side of things. Like you don't want anybody to know that you had it, so I'm going to get rid of it real quick. But also, like if the second way that I look at it is if if you just you look at people who like do the scratch offs for the lottery.
Oh my stars.
You know, and
the poor tax.
Yeah,
that's what that is.
That's what it is. It's the tax on the poor, and everybody makes the statements. They're like, well, you know, I'm helping out
the school system,
helping education out. And
right.
I know one guy who's like, well, as soon as I hit that lottery, I'm going to fund this Christian education thing or whatever. And it's like, why don't you just fund it now? You know?
Right. But $1 still funds it, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. So every single time that they win the scratch off, what do? They don't take the money, put it in their pocket, and go. What I see them do is they buy more scratch offs.
Yes.
And it's just, and so now I'm not saying that the lottery is dishonesty, but all I'm saying is like when you gain something that you didn't have to earn, that it was just kind of either given to you or it was gained by some means of dishonesty, like it doesn't mean as much to you. You know.
Well, you know, here's an example.
But whenever you have to work hard for it, you know, it means something to you.
You got some skin in it, right?
That's right.
So Liam, he had done a little task at the house, and he had earned $4, right? Well,
and you pay good.
I know, that's right. My brother, I think, gives that much for teeth. You know, when the tooth fairy comes, you get a quarter in my house. I think his house you get $5. So the 4 girls, he's going to have almost a college education in it.
My kids are like, "What's the tooth fairy?"
Well, so here's the thing: is that Liam likes all these old video game stuff, right? And I mean, like stuff that's 30, 40 years old. Well, he's got this Game Boy that's got this little backup battery on the side of it that you can plug in that you don't use your batteries. You can recharge it, right? Well, the battery in it give out on him. So he says, Daddy, do you think we can take this thing and we can be able to take the battery out of it and put a new one in it? I said, sure, let's do that. So we took the battery out and we realized we're going to have to buy a new battery to put in it. Well, he was all for that as long as I was spending my money.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Liam, if you want this to be fixed, you're going to have to spend your money. Well, wait a minute now. You mean you're not going to buy it? No, I'm not going to buy it for you. You can spend your money.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
And it was $8.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
right.
$8 is all it was. It's twice what he has. You got me? And I was even willing to let him buy it on credit. You got me? Mm-hmm. And pay it back. But all of a sudden when he was spending his money, it was a lot different. You know why? Because he had some skin in the game on that one.
Right.
Well, it's like when you go to the store and you're like, you want to get something? The answer is never no.
Mm-hmm.
You got me? The answer is never no. They're always like, yeah.
Can we go see the toy section?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The fishing section,
yeah.
The knives, the bullet guns. Right, exactly.
And I'll tell you what, I really enjoy seeing my boys transition from going from the toy section to the hunting section or the gun section.
Maybe.
However,
maybe.
It does cost more money.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We got into duck hunting this year. I mean, like we poured $1,000 into duck hunting this year.
Right.
So you start weighing the weight of how much ducks you kill by the pound. You're like, we just about could have ate gold cheaper than we could duck this year.
Yep.
But I'm spending my money then, right? But I work for it, okay? So here's the thing, is that Proverbs 13:11, wealth gained hastily goes just as quick, right?
It gets blown.
So let's take a minute if we can. And I was looking at this now. By any time I make a statement like this, it's not because I'm some authority on this. It's just because I just done a little math, okay? Mm-hmm. But best I can tell, about half, 16, 15 of the parables of 35, 40 parables that Jesus taught were on money.
It's loaded.
We're on money.
On money. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on money. And there are over... This is just a quick Excel compilation, right? Just let it do the math for me because I got tired of counting real quick. But there's at least, that I can tell, almost 2,000 scriptures in the Bible that deal with money, tithing, offering, collection.
Yeah, finances.
Finances. 2,000 scriptures in the Bible that deal with it. There are 25 different of the parables that in some way deal with stewardship. Mm-hmm. In the
what you do with the money,
or your time, or whatever, right? Because so anyways, I thought today we would let's take a quick close look at some of the ways that the Bible. So when the reason why I want to do this is because when Bernie was running for president, nobody wanted to vote for him that is our age really and up unless they have a certain political viewpoint. But because he was a socialist, right? But when everybody's handing out government checks, all of a sudden he makes us all socialists. And so it's so easy. Now, if I'm honest with myself, I was happy to get mine, right?
Yeah, I don't know anybody that was like super mad.
Yeah, but I know that it's going to cost far more
That's right.
than what I got.
Yeah.
And so let's take a look at the Bible's view on how we get money, and that maybe we can really make draw some serious lines about the importance of it. Because the Bible does all these things, like we talked last week about alcohol. It doesn't go into all these huge details of why you don't need to do all this stuff, right? A few times we looked at last week, like the drunkards that fall in the fire and fall down and hurt themselves and all that stuff. But if the Bible needed to explain every blooming thing that we need to do and why we don't need to do it, how big would the book be then? And so I thought we could look at a few things. Like some of the things I thought about one of them is in the parable in Matthew chapter 25. With the ways that the Bible authorizes a person getting money. Because I had Christians have said to me before, now I'm not a big marketeer by no stretch of the imagination, and if Joey Rivers is watching live, then he'll know that this is true. But in Matthew 25, I had a Christian come to me one time and say, Chris, I think that it's wrong for us to play the stock market. And I said, well, why do you think that for? And they said, well, that's like gambling. I said, well, why do you see it that way? And they said, well, you're taking money and you're putting it towards something with the risk you might lose it. I said, I can definitely see that. That in the classic sense is a gamble, right? But anytime, so when I start a business.
Yeah, but it's more of a calculated gamble. And yeah, go ahead. When you start a business.
If I start a business, like when we used to build houses,
you're taking a chance.
I took a chance.
Don't be an entrepreneur because you're gambling with your money.
Well, so that's the thing, is that you look at it in the classic sense. It's like, is there dancing that's wrong? Absolutely, right? But any rhythmic movement to the music is dancing, right? Yeah. That's the literal definition of it. So if I'm tapping my foot to a Hank Williams Sr. song, that's dancing, but it's a whole lot different than other kind of dancing, right?
Dirty dancing,
prom night dancing stuff, right? So in Matthew 25, in this parable that the Lord uses, verse 27, this is the parable of the talents, right? And the 5, the 3, and the 1 talent man, right? The 1 talent man, what did he do? Remember what he did?
Yeah, he buried it.
Yeah, he took his money and buried it, and didn't there was no return on it. So in verse 27, he said, so you ought, this is the Lord, right? So you ought to, well, let's just read verse 26. But his Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming would have received my own with interest. So what is the one way that's authorized there for us to get?
Yeah, give it to the banker.
Interest, right? Interest income. So that's the same thing as playing the market. It's the same thing as in like in a Christmas fund, right? Those are all the same thing.
Yeah, and to me, this is almost like a minimum thing. Like the Lord wasn't really pleased. He wasn't pleased with the guy just sitting on it, burying it, putting it in a safe, holding on to it, or putting it wherever. The Lord also wasn't. He wasn't happy with him, the fact that he hadn't produced more. So to me, almost a minimum thing here is to give it to the bankers and to make some increase on it. And so what kind of steward am I going to be with what God's given me? And so receiving with interest, that's something that, I think about that God is. Yeah, I know that there's really good guys in the church that I know of that they're like Colby. He's one that I know that he's one of the few guys that I know that can take a credit card and be so disciplined with it that he literally makes money on it. Like he's the only dude probably that makes money off the credit card company.
Right.
But he got one of these things where they pay him cash if he uses. So he buys his gas with it, buys groceries with it, and then boom, he gets $100 a month or something on it, or however much it is. But so literally he makes like $700 a year off this credit card. Well, so that's so tempting for other people to do, But see, he's so disciplined with it.
Right.
But even he uses that as being a good steward with it because
Right.
he's so disciplined with his finances that it's just another way that that he's prospering, that the Lord is blessing him with.
And you think about even that, so we've got one that we do the same thing with. But when we lived in Virginia, all our banks back home would give you some kind of like rewards scenario, and we'd use it just to buy like Amazon cards and stuff like that and hand them out at Christmas time or whatever. We moved down here, we had to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I hadn't had a credit card before, so I'm so scared. So I just pay mine off every Friday because I don't know how this whole like beat your interest to the bank. But I looked at my reward statement the other day, and it was over $1,200 worth of rewards on there.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to keep letting it build up because if it gets to a point one day where something happens, I want to have that money in there,
Yeah.
right?
Well, be careful because in the fine print, they might be like, well, it's only good for
6 months.
Yeah. Right.
Well, the thing of it is for me is that, but look at how much money I had to spend to get 1,200.
That's right.
Like if I buy a packet, like I'm sitting here and I got a little Samsung alert thing on here where Jessica apparently has bought something. She's gone today to Texas, and so apparently she's bought something somewhere. Well, I got an alert on here, so everything we use it for, but that's very minimal gain.
He's watching you, Jess.
Right. But so here's the thing: is that this is one way that the Bible authorizes.
Yeah.
But you're not going to. This is not a get rich quick scheme.
Not at all.
So I have tried to figure out. If there was a way that you can make $1 million in a minute, there'd be a lot more people doing it.
Yeah.
Right. That's what all they would be doing.
Yeah. I was looking the other day, and Jeff Bezos. You know how much he makes in a minute?
A gob.
A gob, and he makes $222,000 a minute. Like in the time that we're sitting here in this podcast, he'll make $13.4 million.
Yeah, I mean, just think about that.
Yeah, so if he had to sit down, it literally, if he was to pick up $100 bill every single second,
It would cost him money.
it would cost him money because he would be
Stopping working.
because literally for him to he literally makes 3,700 $100 bills a second.
So this is funny you brought this up because I thought about this last night. You know why I thought about it? Because Verizon. So I got my cell phone. You got yours with Verizon.
Yeah.
Do they give you these rewards every month that you get to do?
No.
Well, so for whatever reason they
If
give
they
us.
do, I don't see it.
Well, it's really been a nuisance because all the rewards is like you can get $10 off an accessory or like I don't want their accessories.
I
right?
don't pay attention to all that.
Well, they started giving you $3, but it was $3 towards Starbucks. Well, that buys you what, a half a cup of coffee? We call it $6, right?
Yeah.
Paul Stafford can tell us how much a cup of coffee is at Starbucks
Every day.
Yeah, but I know that $3 doesn't get me anywhere, so I would just kind of gift that off to somebody. Like, hey, got you. I'm thinking of you.
Thinking of you.
It's $3 halfway to a cup. Well, last night. And it's so how often I look at it. It may have been on there for 6 months, but last night I got the little alert, and it said choose your reward, and I never looked at it. Well, it was now I can choose a $3 Lowe's card or a $3 Amazon card or a $3. So I put the $3 Amazon. I put it on my Amazon account, right?
$3.
$3, and I was looking last night thinking, this very conversation I had in my head for Jeff Bezos to stop and put $3 on his Amazon account. He would go so far down the hole that because it took me like 10 minutes to figure out how to do this and put it over there and all this and another just for $3. And when I bought one of our cameras this morning, I accidentally spent it already. So the thing of it is that there is a way that the Bible authorizes through interest gained, right? And this is a way that we can do it. But there is that, even in that, the challenge and the greed of it becomes sometimes the wanting to get the get rich quick scheme, right? That's why we have laws against, Martha Stewart pulled time over it, right? Yeah. And all these, but the Bible does authorize it that way.
Yep.
So the second way I thought about there's an interesting way you can illustrate it is in Luke 3. Luke 3. And it's with John the Baptist. Luke 3 about verse, I don't know, 30 or so would be where it's at. Yeah, maybe back a little bit. Yeah, so this is where the people are coming to John to be baptized by him in the wilderness, right?
Oh, you're talking about the tax collectors?
The tax collectors and the soldiers and everything like that. And so the tax collectors come to him, and it says, verse 12, "Teacher, what shall we do?" And he said, what?
Yeah, collect no more than what is appointed for you.
All right. And then the second one, he says, to the soldiers, he said, "What shall we do?" And they said, "Don't intimidate anyone or accuse falsely, and be content with your wages."
Yeah.
So both of those are authorized ways, and they're really one and the same. What I mean by that is that these tax collectors worked, and they gained a wage.
Right.
These soldiers worked, and they gained a wage. So, number one, it's okay to be a soldier.
That's right.
And number two, it's okay to be a tax collector.
That's right.
But everybody's going to hate you.
That's right.
But don't abuse what you got.
That's right. And so the tax collectors in that day and time, just a little bit of culture is that, you know, it would be almost like us if the Russians took us over, they would say, "Chris, we want you to collect taxes from Americans to give to Russia." And so whatever they owe Russia, you collect that, and then whatever you gather off the top, then you can put that in your pocket, and that's how you make your wages.
Yeah, and so that but it's up to that person then to understand what's ethical, right? The ethical number that you can do, right? And so, or with the soldiers, you know, one of the interesting things that I used to hear people bellyache about where I worked at was they should be paying us more. I don't suppose there's ever been a place anywhere that people didn't bellyache that they should be paying us more.
Right.
Whether it's police or teachers or janitors, right? Yeah. I mean, the janitors where I worked at made $20-some an hour.
Wow.
And so, you know, you figure that but guess what they did? They still bellyached.
Oh, yeah.
And they still even pulled that's not my job. You ever hear somebody say that? That's not my job description.
Ain't my job.
Well, so here's another way through work. And you know what? We're on a very dangerous path because I'm going to tell you that the Bible is very clear about some things, and some things it is very explicit about. That's Paul tells the Thessalonians that if a man doesn't work, what?
Neither shall he eat.
Neither shall he eat. So what does God expect us to do to earn our keep?
Yeah, he expects us to work, and you know, that's one thing that stealing your children. And I remember, you know, my dad looked at me when I was 12, and he said, "Son, I'll never co-sign for you." And I can't imagine looking at my kid, and I think I've said that on this podcast here before, but it was a realization. It was one of the best lessons for me in my life, in that he never has, and that's a blessing. So my first vehicle was a $500 ghetto Jeep, you know, Jeep Cherokee Laredo, 1986, baby. But guess what? I took care of that thing. Learned how to change the oil, learned how to check the oil, all these things, you know. It had some leaks and things, and so it was a good lesson for me. But whenever you have something just given to you, you don't appreciate it. But when you have to earn it, so I'd saved up $5,000 for a vehicle, but I chose to spend $500.
That's right,
because it was my money then.
That's right.
It was, you know, Daddy wasn't buying the batteries.
That's right.
So it makes a big difference. And
well, and that goes back to you know, this idea that you got some skin in the game with it, because at the end of the day, when you got blisters on your hands and you realize that you've done something to earn it, and it's not that. But this is for every law that God gives us is from the rich to the poor. So you think about this, laws, or I say laws, but commands, whatever you want to say about hospitality. It doesn't matter if you live, like, I know every one of our wives struggle with this. Is my house nice enough? Is my house clean enough?
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. That does not matter. Those rules about hospitality does not matter if you live in a straw hut with a dirt floor. Mm-hmm. What is that person supposed to say? My dirt's dirtier than your dirt? See, that rule of hospitality still applies to that person.
That's right.
Just as much as it does to you that live in your fancy house.
Yeah, so it's whatever your hand finds to do, you do it, you know, with all your might for the Lord.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're even in the law there were provisions for poor people, and none of those provisions were ever about giving them what they needed. It was never about giving them like when Ruth meets Boaz. Mm-hmm. He didn't tell his workers to go out there and bundle up some satchels of grain and sit them in a corner and let her and Naomi come scoop them up.
She had to glean too.
She still had to go out there and work. She had to have some skin in the game. If a man doesn't work, then he doesn't eat. Yeah. And I understand the scenario and what Paul's telling the Thessalonians. They think Jesus is coming back. Let's just kick our heels up. Let's just kind of bump around here. Let's just make do till he gets back. No. You get to work, son.
That's right. And that's the blessing too. Like, I've literally talked to brothers in the church that said, hey, I think it's unscriptural to retire. And not meaning, and now I'm a guy who's retired from law enforcement, but it's not to say that so you think about it, you get one life to live. Mm-hmm. Are you going to spend the rest of your last 20 years on a golf course? Now, not saying you can't evangelize on a golf course, but what I'm so impressed by brothers in the church who put so much emphasis into their finances that to where that they can retire early so that they can work for the Lord. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is that retiring, is it scriptural?
That's right.
Is it really in the Bible to where I can retire? And you go, well, Bob, it's nobody else's business. But the whole thing is the Lord's always telling us, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that you labor not in vain. And in 1 Corinthians 15:58. So if I'm supposed to always be growing, always abounding, always being steadfast, and always working, then so if my finances are stable, all right, I should be doing it. Retiring is so that I can dedicate time to the Lord.
And so when you think about Zacchaeus, then right in Luke 19, Jesus meets Zacchaeus. And he just says, I just want to follow you, Lord. He said, whatever I got to do, I'll restore it fourfold. That was not the requirement of the law. Right? So even in this situation scenario like you're talking about here, you're looking at a person who has used their finances they've invested it wisely, they saved, and they're at a position where they can apply this first one we talked about, the interest bearing scenario, right? Mm-hmm. They've got a good enough chunk to where the interest now, the money, the whatever it is, it bears out in their life to where now they don't have to physically work, right? But it doesn't say a man shall not work, neither shall he eat today. He's talking about how you take care of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And so your retirement is just, if you're stepping away from a secular job of monetary gain, it's not about you're retiring from the Lord.
Exactly.
Because you can go on a golf course. Like I hear people say like, I want to get an RV and drive around. And I think about those things like that'd be cool. But I realize real quick that if I do those things, I'm focusing on Chris. Mm-hmm. And we got to realize that in view of the scriptures, in view of the stewardship, in view of what God expects us, all of our gain, all of our finance. I mean, that's why in 2 Corinthians 8:9, Paul talks about this idea of sowing seed. He's talking about you sow a little bit of seed, you reap a little bit. You sow a lot of seed, you reap a lot. And he ties that directly to finances.
To giving, right.
Yeah, and what he's saying is that what we can do with the money, it's not about like, I'm going to do this and then God's going to bless me. He's talking about reaping souls.
Right.
And so that's what we got to view this in a light of how I take care of my family. But that is my secondary responsibility, because my job is not just to have a good living, but to get to heaven. And so that's why those laws apply to everybody from the richest to the poorest. And so let's look at you got something you want to add?
No, go ahead.
So let's look at the third one, and then we'll move on to the fourth one. So in James chapter 4, is a scenario that plays out just about conducting commerce, right? You're a shopkeeper or something like that.
Yeah.
So James 4 and verse number 13. He says, come now, you who say today or tomorrow we'll go to such and such city, spend a year, buy and sell and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow, for what is your life? It's even a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. So James does not condemn this person for going to such and such city and buying, selling, getting gain. So there's nothing wrong with flipping real estate. There's nothing wrong with buying tools and selling tools, right? There's nothing wrong with those things. But so many times so what he's using is the idea of how we conduct commerce. But even in that, there's still a requirement that God wants, like, hey, I'm from the part of the country where racing is a big thing. Mm-hmm. But you know what everybody wants to do? They want to make it to the big circuit. Well, guess what? Everybody races on Sunday. It's real hard to provoke them to love and good works if you're turning left for 400 laps on Sunday, right? And so there's a lot of things that I can do in this realm of commerce, but still it's not what the Lord wants me to do. So I can do a lot of I can conduct commerce in a lot of different ways, but still not be pleasing to what God would have me to do in regards to that.
Yeah, I don't need to go against God's will.
Yeah, and so what James is here, you see another way of authorization. There's buying at one price and selling at another price, right? Buy and sell and get gain. Mm-hmm. So it's okay for me to buy something and then sell it to you to make a profit off of it.
Sure.
But what he's trying to get at is that even in doing that, I've still got to consider what the Lord would have me to do.
That's right.
With regards to
you should be saying that the Lord wills and not just saying based on what Bob or Chris thinks is right.
Yeah, so you got something you want to add? I see you flipping.
Well, yeah, what I wanted to say was kind of back on point 2 is I think about 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8. If anyone does not provide for his own, especially those of his household, he's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And in context, he's talking about, widows and how that if, if my mom she passes away and she's beyond the age of remarrying,
And your dad?
Huh?
Your dad passed away.
Yeah, my dad passed away, sorry.
Yeah.
Then I'm supposed to take care of my mom as a son. And so,
a widow indeed.
That's right.
That's why I use that term, widow indeed there.
Yeah, in need. And so, yeah, she's a widow indeed, right?
Yeah.
And is also a widow in need.
Right.
But so it's my obligation as her family to take care of her. And then if she doesn't have a family, then let's put it on the church.
Well, that's why James uses this pure and undefiled religion before the Father is what?
Yeah, to visit widows and orphans in their time of need.
Yeah.
And this is so me as looking at my household, that there's some responsibilities for me to take when it comes to their finances and when it comes to their needs and to take care of them. I mean, not only now, but providing for my family. Like I've dealt with a lot of death in looking at my career and it's a hard thing when a family gets left behind with nothing.
Yeah, man. And so you think about this, like the law. So we talked at the beginning about how God just gives us a command and didn't give us a lot of like whys and this and that and the other. So you think about the stealing, right? Thou shalt, everybody kind of associates the 10 Commandments with the law, right? Mm-hmm. Because you kind of get these nutshell things like, right. God tells Moses and on the mountain, don't steal, right? Thou shalt not steal is, we quoted in the King James, right? But he tells them, tell them don't steal. They can't steal. Well, Ephesians 4 and verse 28 says, let him who steal steal no longer, but rather let him what?
Give place.
Labor.
Yeah.
Labor, working with his hands, what is good, that he may have something to give who has need. So, this is still tied back into what you do with your money. It's still not about hoarding your money. Mm-hmm. This idea that Jesus uses the parable of a man that he has his great crop, and he's going to tear down his barn and say to myself.
Yeah, Luke 12, he's like, so look here, dude, your soul's going to be required of you tonight. Yeah,
and he didn't do anything to necessarily, there's nothing that indicates in that parable that he extra fertilized or something like that. It just, the Lord blessed him in that. And, Ecclesiastes 9, uses this idea that the race is not always to the strong or to the swift or to the fast, whichever kind of version you're reading there. But time and chance happens to us all, and so that's in pain, that's in business. I mean, that's everything. But it's because that's what the Lord's looked at, and He said this is what's best for everybody. So the last one I want to look at before we run out of time is in Romans 13. Okay, and the reason why I want to look at this one is because this one's going to start.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah, because it's in the Bible. The reason why I look at this one in order.
Because it's God's Word.
Is that this one's going to stir the pot a little bit.
Oh, no.
So.
Your wife said she couldn't be spending money because. Karen said she can't because she's driving. And then Jessica said, and I'm watching you.
Maybe she's getting Karen to buy something online or something for her there.
Here, buy this on my phone.
Yeah. So Romans 13, this is, Paul writing to the church at Rome, consequently, the seat of the empire's governmental system. And he's writing to them there, and this is where we deal with civil obedience.
Yeah.
The Romans 13. Well, Romans 13, and here's, as far as I can tell, the fourth way that God allows there to be the obtaining of funds. In verse number 7. Render therefore to all their due, what's he say?
Taxes to whom taxes are due, customs to whom customs, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor.
So, what is the way that God authorizes there of the receiving of funds?
Taxing.
Yep. You know, I think one of the most interesting things that I find in the religious world is that people can't hardly tell you any specifics of what it would take to be saved, by and large. They may say, believe in Jesus or love Jesus, or they may even say, confess Jesus or repent, but they really don't understand the mechanics of that. What I find interesting is that people so very often, if you ask them how much you should give to the church.
Oh, I'm going to tithe. I'm going to 10%.
10%. Yeah. Well, essentially, Bob, that's just a tax.
Yeah.
That was just a tax for the Israelites. That has nothing, and maybe we could do something on that sometime, but that has nothing to do with the New Testament church as regards to tithing. Mm-hmm. But the tithe was just a tax to take care of the the
priesthood,
the Levites, right? And so, you know, the taxing has always been an authorized way. Now, this is where the hairy part gets in on it, right? Because the government's job here is listed in verse 4.
Yeah, being a minister.
For good for you. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain, for he's God's minister and avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. We've got to be very careful that we don't see the government's job as being the one that needs to take care of us.
That's right.
Because it's never been the government's job to be an entitlement system.
That's right. If you're dependent on the government to take care of you and your family, to me, then you're
circumventing the system.
You're outside of the will of God.
You're short-circuiting the way God would have you to be.
That's right.
Now, I'm not going to say, and I'm not going to go as far as to say that it's sinful, because I certainly spent my stimulus check, but they sent it to me, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't solicit it from them.
But there's a difference. Like your family's provided for outside of the stimulus check.
That's right. Now,
I'm not making excuses for anybody, but at the same time, like you're not over here in some line like asking the government to take care of you and your family.
Right. And so I tell you, the real challenge with this is the further down the march of socialism that we go, the harder it's going to be to turn back. Because I saw a quote a while back that said you can vote your way into communism, but you're going to shoot your way out of it. Mm. And the problem is that we get so used to the government giving us everything that we become dependent on the government instead of God's ways.
Yeah. So one thing that I've taken to heart, like just out of 2020, is like there are so many. You know, there was a race issues and things that were, you know, that we can look at and the divides that are there. But I literally want, you know, I've made a point to have my children interact more with black people, and so, like, you know, Mr. Tillman, not that we hadn't beforehand, but like, you know, Tillman McCullum, you know, we've gone squirrel hunting a couple times with him, and you know, I want my boys walking through the woods with men of integrity, men of integrity, period, whatever color that they are, and so, but it's still a blessing to, like, you know, Tillman was just talking to me about like how they used to take, you know, grain and corn and stuff, and they would take it to the grits mill, and it's like
grist.
Yeah, so that
GRIST.
Yeah, so that you could get grits out of it, mm-hmm. And so this so when you, and then, you know, he said so we would bring home these flour sacks, you know, and then Mama would turn flour sacks into blankets, mm-hmm. and it's just but the whole thing is like, you
know, the company started printing. Like, you look back, they people was using them for clothes so much.
They would print different designs on them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, but at the same time, like, he has grown like sugar cane for years to make his own syrup with. But you just go look at the gardening and all those kind of things, and it's important for me, you know, when my children have been in the backyards and seen a chicken killing, you know, that, hey, this is where your chicken comes from, mm-hmm. And so, you know, I want my kids to know how to process deer, mm-hmm. and ducks and all those kinds of things, and it's just to know where your food comes from. But yeah, being that self-reliant, that that we've moved so far away from that literally if the trucks stop, America stops.
Yeah, and you think about it, Bob. Like we're about a month away at any given point from complete eruption of chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what happens. Like I rode by Walmart, come down to Gandy today. Did you see how many cars was at the Walmart out there? Mm-hmm. They were chock full, and they just calling for storms.
Yeah.
I mean, and like when we had the snow up here, we were up there at the camp hunting. Oh, yeah. You couldn't find water anywhere.
Yeah.
Bob, nowhere could you find water up there. And that may have been because people's pipes are freezing or whatever. I don't know. But we're moments away from chaos, and it's because we depend on what has happened as we've become so interdependent on what the government should do. You know, Booker T. Washington, you know, I don't know if it's still required as a required reading, but in his book Up from Slavery is that he said one of his biggest fears was that he didn't want people to see the government as the one that freed them, as one day the government needing to take care of them. Mm. And, you know, that's the challenge with anything, is that when we see the government as the one that's doing it for us instead of ourselves, then we become really dependent on that. When the government is never been, the Bible's very clear about what the government's job is. The government's job is to establish peace, to provide law and order. It's never been to take care of us. Now, the taxes and all that stuff is to feed those people that work for the government.
Yeah.
The same way that you excise a wage is essentially, it's almost the same thing unilaterally. But we've got to be real careful because we're sowing some seeds. We're sowing some seeds right now that's going to be really hard when it's time to reap them. And if we can just do this, just understand how God wants us to do things with regards to commerce, money, taking care of ourselves, everything, then we'll be a lot better off in the long run because we're just doing it His way, even if it means we got blisters on our hands.
The Lord wants you to work. This is the Unscripted Podcast.